You wake up in the middle of the night and instantly feel something is wrong. The room is completely dark and silent around you. Your body feels heavy with exhaustion from the entire day, but your mind suddenly feels strangely awake and alert. You reach for the clock beside your bed almost automatically. The numbers glow quietly in the darkness of the room. 3 a.m. appears on the screen again. At first, you think it's just a random wake-up during the night, but something about the moment feels oddly familiar to you, because this has happened before, maybe many nights in a row. Your thoughts slowly begin moving faster and louder inside your mind. You try to relax your body and sink back into the pillow. You take a slow breath, hoping sleep will return naturally, but your brain refuses to slow down or settle. And the more you try to fall asleep again, the more awake you feel. Your mind keeps moving even though your body desperately wants rest. If you have ever wondered why you wake up at 3 a.m. like this, or why your brain suddenly enters what feels like alert mode at night, sleep science suggests something unusual may be happening in the brain, something that explains why people experience a racing mind at night. But to understand it, we need to start with a surprising discovery. I'm Dr. Sarah, a sleep medicine specialist with a background in psychiatry. For years, I've studied what happens inside the brain during the night. Many of the people I work with describe the exact same sleep pattern. They fall asleep without much difficulty at the beginning of the night. Their body relaxes and the first stage of sleep begins normally. But several hours later, something unexpected interrupts that process. And that interruption often happens at almost the exact same time. Many of them suddenly wake up around 3 a.m. without understanding why. Their eyes open and their brain immediately feels alert again. Their thoughts begin moving faster, even though their body feels tired. It feels like the brain quietly switched back into daytime mode. Even when they try to relax, the mind keeps producing new thoughts. And the harder they try to sleep, the more awake they seem to become. That moment creates a frustrating cycle that repeats night after night. When patients describe this moment, they usually say the same sentence. They tell me they just want to sleep through the night again. They miss the feeling of waking up rested in the morning. They wonder why their brain suddenly refuses to stay asleep, and they often start worrying that something is wrong with them. But what they are experiencing is actually very common, especially for people who struggle with insomnia after 40. Around this age, the brain becomes more sensitive to stress signals. Changes in hormones can slightly affect the circadian rhythm. The nervous system may react faster to subtle nighttime stimulation, and small increases in cortisol can interrupt deeper sleep cycles. That is why many people suddenly start waking up at 3 a.m., even if they never had sleep problems earlier in life. And this often leads them to search for how to stay asleep all night. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not the only one. Millions of people experience a racing mind at night. They describe the feeling that their brains simply will not shut off, even though their body desperately needs rest. And if you find these explanations helpful, take a second to like the video. You can also follow the channel to learn more about sleep science, because understanding the brain changes how people approach insomnia. Now, this is where the story becomes truly interesting, because most people assume this pattern is caused by insomnia itself. They believe the brain has somehow lost the ability to sleep normally. But modern sleep science suggests something very different is happening. In many cases, the brain is not failing to sleep. Instead, it may be quietly preventing sleep from going deeper. This does not happen consciously or intentionally. It happens through biological systems designed to protect the body, systems that monitor safety even while you are asleep. When those systems detect instability, they can interrupt sleep cycles, and that interruption can feel like sudden alertness in the middle of the night. Researchers now describe this protective state with a specific term. They call it the Neural Sleep Inhibition Response. It refers to a condition where the brain reduces deep sleep activation, not because the body cannot sleep, but because the brain believes it should remain partially alert. This protective response can activate quietly without obvious warning, and many people experience it without realizing what is happening. When the neural sleep inhibition response begins activating at night, the body may still feel deeply tired and ready for rest, but the brain begins shifting toward a subtle alert state. This shift can interfere with the brain's natural sleep switch, the system that normally keeps you asleep through the night. Instead of staying stable, the brain briefly reactivates awareness, and that moment often leads to sudden wakefulness. This is why many people describe waking up at 3 a.m. unexpectedly. Their mind suddenly becomes active even in a quiet, dark room. They experience a racing mind at night without clear reason. They feel their brains simply will not shut off, and once they wake up, it becomes difficult to fall asleep again. The body wants rest, but the brain keeps producing alert signals, creating the frustrating pattern that repeats across many nights. Understanding this response changes how we interpret insomnia because it suggests the brain is not broken or malfunctioning. Instead, it may be trying to maintain a protective state, a state that keeps a small part of the brain monitoring the environment, even while the rest of the body attempts to sleep. And the key factor that can trigger this response at night often begins with what stress signals do inside the sleeping brain. During the day, the brain constantly monitors signals from the environment. It evaluates pressure, responsibilities, emotional tension, and uncertainty. When stress increases, the brain activates its internal protection systems. One of the main systems involved releases a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol keeps the mind alert, focused, and ready to react quickly. This response is extremely useful when the body needs to stay awake, but that same system must calm down later at night. Under normal conditions, the body follows a very precise rhythm. As evening approaches, cortisol levels begin to slowly decrease. At the same time, another hormone called melatonin begins rising. Melatonin signals to the brain that the night cycle has started. The nervous system gradually shifts toward relaxation and recovery. Brain activity slows and sleep cycles begin organizing themselves. This process allows the body to enter deeper and restorative sleep. During stable sleep, the brain reduces its daytime alert systems. Breathing becomes slower and the nervous system quiets down. The sleep switch begins guiding the brain through deeper stages. These stages help restore memory, metabolism, and emotional balance. Most people pass through these cycles several times during the night, and ideally the brain remains stable until morning arrives. But this balance can change when stress remains active for too long. When the brain experiences prolonged periods of pressure or tension, it may struggle to completely deactivate its protection system. Instead of fully shutting down the alert network at night, the brain keeps a small portion of it quietly active, almost like leaving a dim security light on in the background. This subtle alert signal can remain present during sleep, and eventually it can interrupt deeper sleep cycles. When that alert signal becomes strong enough during the night, the brain may suddenly trigger a brief return to wakefulness. Your eyes open and your mind feels unexpectedly aware again, even though the room around you remains quiet and dark. This awakening can occur at similar times across many nights because the brain tends to repeat biological rhythms, and for many people, this interruption happens around 3 a.m. But that still raises an important question researchers studied closely. Why would the brain choose that moment to wake you up? Why does a racing mind suddenly appear during the night? And why does the brain sometimes refuse to fall asleep again? The answer begins with how the brain constantly evaluates safety, even while you are completely unconscious and asleep. And that hidden safety system plays a bigger role than most people realize. Imagine for a moment that your brain works like a nighttime security system, a system that never fully shuts down even while you sleep. Its job is to quietly monitor your safety through the entire night. It constantly evaluates signals from the body and the environment. Most of the time, this system stays calm and silent in the background. When everything appears stable, the brain allows deep sleep to unfold, and the body moves naturally into its restorative cycles. When the brain senses safety, the nervous system begins to slow down. Breathing becomes deeper and more regular during the night. Muscles release tension that accumulated during the day. Brain waves shift into slower patterns associated with recovery. These deeper stages of sleep repair the body and restore energy. Memory processing and emotional regulation also happen here, and the brain maintains these cycles until morning arrives. But the brain never completely stops scanning for potential danger. Even during deep sleep, a small monitoring system stays active. It listens for unusual signals from inside the body. It also responds to subtle changes in the environment. Most of the time, these signals remain quiet and stable, but when something suggests instability, the brain becomes cautious, and that caution can change the depth of sleep. If the brain detects even a mild signal of stress or tension, it may activate a quiet alert mechanism during the night. This does not mean a real threat is present in the room. Instead, the brain behaves as if it should remain prepared, so it keeps a small alarm signal running in the background, almost like a security system set to sensitive mode, waiting for any change that might require attention. When this subtle alarm activates during sleep cycles, the brain may suddenly interrupt deep sleep stages. Your eyes open and awareness returns without warning. You might look around wondering why you woke up. Nothing in the room appears unusual or dangerous, but the brain has already shifted into alert mode, and falling asleep again suddenly becomes difficult. Researchers now describe this protective condition with a specific name. They call it the Neural Sleep Inhibition Response. It refers to a state where the brain reduces deep sleep activation because part of the nervous system believes it should remain alert. When this response remains active during the night, sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented over time. And this raises an important question about why it becomes more common with age. After about age 40, the brain begins changing in subtle ways. These changes are natural and part of normal human biology, but they can slightly affect how the body regulates sleep signals. The nervous system becomes a little more sensitive to daily stress. Hormonal rhythms that once felt perfectly stable start shifting, and the balance between alertness and rest becomes easier to disturb. This is one reason sleep patterns can change during midlife. One of the key factors involved is how the body regulates cortisol. Cortisol normally follows a very precise daily rhythm. It rises in the morning to help you wake up and feel alert, then it gradually decreases as evening approaches. But after 40, that regulation can become more sensitive. Even mild stress signals may influence nighttime cortisol patterns, and this can affect how deeply the brain remains asleep. Another important factor is the circadian rhythm itself. This internal clock coordinates sleep timing across the body. It influences hormone release, brain activity, and body temperature. When the circadian rhythm becomes slightly more fragile, sleep cycles may react more strongly to small disruptions. Late stress, emotional tension, or irregular sleep schedules, all of these can influence how stable sleep remains overnight. When the nervous system detects stress during the night, the brain may react faster than it once did years earlier. This reaction can activate protective alert signals, and those signals may trigger the Neural Sleep Inhibition Response. The brain begins reducing deep sleep activation even when the body still needs rest, which can lead to sudden awakenings during the night. This is why many people notice a pattern beginning after 40. They wake up around 3 a.m. without an obvious reason. Their mind becomes active while the room stays quiet and dark. They experience a racing mind at night unexpectedly. Falling asleep again suddenly becomes difficult, and the next morning they wake up feeling tired, even though they spent enough hours in bed. But there's an important point many people never hear. These changes do not mean your sleep system is broken. They do not mean insomnia has permanently taken control. In fact, the brain remains extremely adaptable throughout life. When the right signals return, the nervous system can rebalance itself, and the brain can gradually reduce the neural sleep inhibition response, which leads to an important question about how that shift begins. The encouraging truth is that the brain remains extremely adaptable, even after years of disrupted sleep patterns. The nervous system is constantly learning from the signals it receives. Every day, the brain adjusts its responses to stress and safety. This ability is known as neuroplasticity in sleep science. It allows the brain to modify how it regulates alertness and rest, and this flexibility plays a powerful role in restoring healthy sleep. When the brain begins receiving the right nighttime signals, the nervous system can slowly calm its protective reactions. Those subtle alert signals that once interrupted sleep begin to fade. The brain gradually reduces the neural sleep inhibition response. This does not happen instantly or overnight, but the shift can begin surprisingly quickly in some people, especially when the nervous system starts sensing stability again. As this process begins, the body's nighttime chemistry changes. Cortisol levels become more stable throughout the night. The brain stops triggering unnecessary alert responses. Melatonin can follow its natural rhythm more easily. Sleep cycles begin organizing themselves more smoothly, and the brain regains confidence in the safety of sleep, allowing deeper stages of rest to return naturally. This is often when people begin noticing subtle improvements. They may still wake briefly during the night, but the awakenings feel shorter and less intense. Their mind feels quieter when they return to bed. The racing thoughts slowly lose their intensity, and the brain stops jumping immediately into alert mode, which allows sleep to continue more naturally. Over time, something surprising starts to happen. The familiar 3 a.m. wake-ups become less frequent. Some nights pass without the sudden interruption. The mind feels calmer when the lights go out. Sleep begins lasting longer without breaking apart, and many people experience the feeling of sleeping through the night again, a state their brain had quietly been capable of all along. But restoring this balance does not happen by forcing the brain to sleep. Trying to push sleep often increases internal tension. The brain responds better when it begins sensing safety again. That feeling of stability allows the nervous system to relax. And when the brain trusts the night environment, the sleep switch activates more consistently on its own, which leads many people to wonder what kind of support helps that process begin. In addition to healthy sleep habits and stress regulation, some people choose to support the brain with specific nighttime nutrients. These nutrients are often studied in the field of sleep science. Researchers examine how certain compounds influence the nervous system, particularly the signals that control relaxation and nighttime recovery. Because sleep is not controlled by willpower alone, it is deeply connected to brain chemistry and biological timing. Some natural compounds are known to interact with the brain's sleep signals. They may support the balance between melatonin and cortisol during the night. This balance plays a major role in how stable sleep cycles remain. When these signals stay aligned, the nervous system relaxes more easily. The brain feels safer remaining in deeper stages of sleep, and the chances of sudden awakenings can gradually decrease, especially for people who wake up at 3 a.m. with a racing mind. Researchers studying nighttime regulation often focus on three key factors: melatonin balance, which signals the brain that night has begun; cortisol regulation, which prevents alert signals from rising too early; and overall stability of the sleep cycle throughout the night. When these signals remain coordinated, the sleep switch functions smoothly. But when they become unstable, the brain may activate protective responses, such as the Neural Sleep Inhibition Response we discussed earlier. When certain nutrients support these nighttime signals properly, they do not force the brain to shut down artificially. Instead, they help restore the conditions the brain expects during sleep. The nervous system begins receiving calmer internal signals. The brain feels less pressure to stay on alert during the night, and deeper sleep stages can return more naturally, allowing the body to remain asleep longer. Some people prefer using this type of natural nighttime support, especially when combined with healthy sleep habits and stress regulation. Because the goal is not sedation or artificial sleep, the goal is helping the brain stabilize its own sleep signals. This is why many sleep specialists consider certain nutrients helpful, particularly for people experiencing nighttime alert patterns, including waking up at 3 a.m. or difficulty staying asleep. If you are curious about this type of support, there is a doctor-approved option many viewers often ask about. You can find more information in the first pinned comment below this video. It is available there for those who want to explore it further. But even if you never use a supplement at all, understanding what your brain is doing during the night changes everything. Because the real breakthrough happens when people finally understand the mechanism. If you wake up at 3 a.m. and immediately feel your mind turn on, if your brain suddenly feels active even though your body is tired, if your thoughts begin racing the moment you try to sleep again, it is easy to believe something inside you is broken. Many people start blaming themselves for their sleep struggles. They wonder if they lack discipline or mental control at night. But sleep science suggests something very different is happening. In many cases, the brain is not malfunctioning at all. Instead, it may be temporarily stuck in a protective response, a biological state researchers call the Neural Sleep Inhibition Response. This state is designed to keep part of the brain alert. It developed as a survival mechanism throughout human history. The brain learned to stay cautious during potential nighttime danger, even while the rest of the body attempted to sleep. The challenge is that this protection can remain active longer than needed. Modern stress signals can confuse the brain's safety detection system. Pressure from work, responsibilities, or constant stimulation, all of these signals can make the nervous system stay slightly alert during the night. So the brain keeps a small protective alarm active during the night, and that alarm may trigger sudden wakefulness around 3 a.m., even when no real danger exists in the environment. The good news is that this state is not permanent. The brain constantly updates its interpretation of safety signals. When the nervous system begins sensing stability again, the protective alert system slowly begins calming down. The neural sleep inhibition response becomes less active, and the sleep switch begins stabilizing during the night, allowing the brain to remain asleep longer. As that shift happens, many people notice subtle improvements. Their mind feels quieter when they wake briefly at night. They fall back asleep faster than before. The racing thoughts begin fading in intensity, and the familiar 3 a.m. awakenings slowly become less frequent. Eventually, some nights pass without any interruption at all, and sleep begins feeling natural again instead of forced. But there is one more fascinating detail most people never hear about. For many people who wake up at 3 a.m., there is a biological pattern behind it. A temporary shift in cortisol often occurs during the circadian rhythm. This shift tends to appear between 3 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., and it can interact directly with the neural sleep inhibition response. In the next video, I will explain why the brain enters alert mode during that window and what helps stabilize that rhythm so you can finally sleep through the night.